Hello to our friends in Puerto Rico. My name is Philip Rulo with Rultract, and today I'm going to go over how to set up your new Rultract Skyhook retractor system. Now you can see here that I have the Rultract set up on our display table, which is significantly wider than an OR table. But I do have it set up here in order for you to see what it's going to look like when it's set up. We have what is referred to here as a bilateral set. So the surgeon can set it up on the patient's left side in order to take down the lima, and we also have a post and clamp set up on the right side so we can take down the rima as well. So this is for a bilateral. So what you would do is you'd set it up on this side to take down the lima, and then you would hand this portion of the retractor over the table to set it up on the opposite side so the surgeon can take down the rima. So that's why it's called a bilateral set. Now very often, if the surgeon is not doing a bilateral procedure, we are only going to have to focus on how to set up on one side, which most often would be the patient's left side. So that's what I'm going to do today. And then of course I'll touch on how to set up the opposite side if you are going to do a bilateral procedure. What we are going to do first is get familiar with the pieces that are in the tray. Now you're going to have two table clamps. Now keep in mind, if you're doing a single side procedure, you're only going to use one of the table clamps. If you're doing a bilateral, you will need both. You will also have two bottom posts in the tray. These bottom posts go into the table clamps. Again, if you're doing a single side, you only need one post. If you're doing a bilateral, you will need two. Now we'll go over this in detail, but this post goes into the clamp. This is the bottom post. The square portion of the bottom post goes into the clamp. Now we'll go over this during setup. You're also going to have one top post. You only have one top post in the tray because you're going to put this post on either side if you're doing a single or a bilateral. You'll also have your Rultract ratchet assembly with snap clip, and then your rake plate assembly. So those are all of the pieces that are going to be in the tray. When the surgeon said that they're ready to use the Rultract, the first piece that we're going to pull from the tray will be the table clamp. Now what you want to do is to turn this handle counterclockwise, opening the jaws. You don't need to open them all the way, but they need to be open wide enough to put them on the bed rail. So go ahead and turn that counterclockwise until the jaws are open very wide. Now when you put the clamp on the bed rail, you're going to put the top jaw on the bed rail and then rotate that bottom jaw in. And as you're rotating the bottom jaw in, squeeze the jaws together. Don't do it too fast, because what will happen is you won't be able to get it on. So go ahead and rotate it slowly and then squeeze those jaws together. Once you have a uniform grip on the rail, continue to squeeze the jaws together and then turn the handle in order to bring the jaws together and tighten it on the bed rail. What you do not want to do is to put that top jaw on and then use the knob or the handle to bring the jaws together, because it may not get a uniform grip on the rail. So it's important to go ahead and squeeze those jaws together, keep squeezing them together, and then tighten the knob. Be careful not to get your gloves stuck here. It's a pretty tight fit. So you're going to squeeze the jaws together and tighten this as tight as you possibly can. If you have a smaller scrub tech or a scrub nurse putting this clamp on, you may want to find somebody in the OR that's stronger, because it's very important that this clamp is tight on the bed rail in order to provide stability for the retractor. So I go ahead and put this on as tight as I can. Now I'm going to take the bottom post and put it into the clamp. You can see here that this bottom post has a square portion. The top part is not square. So you're going to put the square part into the clamp. When you put this in, you want to make sure that the bend is going away from the table, so toward you when you're putting it in. The reason is this space is designed to provide extra room for the patient's shoulder. So if you put it in like this, the patient's shoulder is going to be hitting it. You don't want to do that. And there would be no point to put it in like this. So go ahead and make sure that when you put it into the clamp, that geometry in the bend is going away from the table to provide additional space for the patient. You can drop it in until the collar makes contact with the clamp and then tighten the wing handle. Now this won't fall through because there's a collar here, but you do want to tighten this wing handle to provide more stability for the retractor. Now you don't have to tighten this very tight, just tighten it so it's tight enough that the top or that the bottom post doesn't wobble. So go ahead and tighten it, then grab your bottom post and move it. You should have no movement whatsoever in this clamp and post. If you do have movement, this knob needs to be tighter and your wing handle needs to be tighter. Something else to consider is maybe the bed rail needs to be tightened. I've been in many cases where people say the Rultract is moving, or many situations, and I will go into the OR myself and find that the rail is actually loose. So if you do have somebody complain about the Rultract moving, make sure that they take an Allen wrench and tighten the OR table bed rail, because very often that bed rail becomes loose over time. Now that we have the bottom post and the clamp onto the OR table bed rail, you take your top post, set it onto the bottom post so it's going straight across the OR table. Then you're going to take your Rultract ratchet assembly and put it onto your top post. Now you want to make sure that this lock knob is opened all the way before putting it onto the top post. So you'll turn it counterclockwise all the way until it stops, and then go ahead and slide your ratchet assembly onto the top post. Now you will want the spool portion and the snap clip portion hanging out over the patient's chest and the handle going out towards the patient's head. So the surgeon will put this on and they will know where they want to position it, and then you go ahead and tighten that lock knob down. It's important that this lock knob gets tightened into one of the detents on the top post. And you can see here these detents are small divots in the post where this lock knob will tighten down. If it's not tightened down into a detent, there will be a big gap. Not sure how well you're going to be able to see that. There is a gap here that you can actually put your finger into, and you can see there's a pretty significant space. If you're tightened down into a detent, there is no space. It's just big enough to put your fingernail in. So that's how you're going to know whether you're in a detent or not. There are alignment marks in order for you to align this properly so the knob goes into a detent. So you have to make sure that the OR knows this lock knob needs to be tightened down into a detent. Now once you have that in position, you can go ahead and snap your rake plate into place. And then of course the surgeon would lower it to the incision and retract. So that actually is all that there is to setting the Rultract up for a single side procedure. Now I have seen people take these two pieces when they're in the tray and they'll put the rake plate onto the snap clip and then go ahead and put that ratchet assembly onto the top post. That's okay. However, these rakes are sharp. If you do that and this is swinging, you run the risk of contaminating this piece. So I wouldn't do that. I would put them on as two separate pieces. So now that we have this set up as a single side, if the surgeon decides that they want to do a bilateral procedure, you would need to put the clamp and the post on the opposite side. Now you can do that while you're setting up the single side, or you can do it later in the procedure. And obviously it's the same thing. You just take your clamp, open the jaw all the way, put it onto the bed rail somewhere almost right across from the other. Tighten the jaws together, tighten that knob. And again, you want this to be as tight as you possibly can get it. And then you're going to take your bottom post, obviously, and put it in, again, with the bend going away from the table to provide space for the patient's shoulder. And then tighten your wing handle in order to get stability here. Now, once the surgeon is done taking down the lima, he will want to take down the rema, which makes it again a bilateral case. So you'll take just the top portion. You're going to hand it across the table very carefully. And then you'll just set it onto the bottom post. And then the surgeon can take down the rema as well. Now you may want to take this rake plate off as you're transferring it across the table in order to not run the risk of contaminating the rake plate. You can see here that my bed rail on my demo table is not aligned properly, so it looks as though the Rultract is leaning. That's just part of the table. So that is how to set the Rultract up for a single and bilateral set. If you have any questions or you want to do a video conference with the setup, I'd be happy to do that. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I hope it was helpful. Have a nice day.